Hello everyone, welcome to this session on Azure. Today in this session, we will be going through various concepts in Azure and then understand how we can deploy a website from scratch onto the Azure infrastructure. Now this is going to be an end-to-end implementation of an Azure project, guys. So stick till the end to understand the whole ecosystem of Azure. So guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Intellipaat channel and also click on that bell icon to never miss out on any updates from us. So now let's go ahead and get started with the session. So we'll start off, guys, by first discussing the story of a startup which basically had their infrastructure on premise and then they were compelled to move on to Azure. So we'll discuss some reasons which basically made them to make this move. And after that, we'll start off with discussing some companies which basically are you making use of Azure right now. Some Fortune 500 companies which are doing that, and then move on to discuss what is Azure, Azure services, Azure pricing, and then move on to discuss the architecture of the website that we are going to deploy today on Azure. And finally, I'm going to show you end to end how you can basically take a project from scratch and deploy it on the Azure infrastructure. So guys, this is the agenda for this session. I hope it's clear to you. Now let's move on and start off with the first topic, which is basically our case study, that is the story of a startup.
So let's take the example wherein, let's say you guys want to start your own company. Let's talk from that perspective, and then we'll understand why big companies are using cloud platforms like Azure today. All right. So let's say you're a guy who just wants to open a food platform. Let's say the food platform that you want to open is Uber Eats. Okay, so if you want to open an application like Uber Eats, what is the first thing that you'll have to do? So obviously, first of all, you will have to have an application, right? Which basically you will be developing and which will basically work, right? So let's say you hired a team of developers and you've done that. So now your application is ready, and now the next step is basically making it available to the world, right? Making it available on the internet. So how will you do that? So for doing that, guys, first of all, you need to host that application on a server. Okay. Now, when you're starting small, and let's say there are 4 or 5 people who are going to use your application, you can do that using your own laptop as well. Now, when you're doing it using your own laptop, let's say you have developed the application, right? And now you want to host it on the internet. So what you do is you basically run that application on your laptop, you connect it to the internet, right? And obviously there are certain other things as well that you would need. For example, you would need a static IP of your laptop, which an IP which is not going to change anytime, right? And at the same time, you would also need 24/7 electricity so that your laptop never shuts down, right? Otherwise, if your laptop shuts down, the other people will not be able to use that application. Okay, so guys, this would be the basic setup that you would need to host your application. Now let's talk about a scenario wherein your application becomes a hit overnight, and now some thousands of users are using your application. Now obviously your laptop will not be enough, so what will you have to do? So as you know that, okay, so my application is actually working, a lot of people want to use my application, and it is going to be a success in the future now. So what you do is you take a loan from some bank, or you take some amount from your savings, and then you basically buy a set of servers. Okay, so those servers take around 2 to 3 days to basically get delivered to you. Then you basically set them up. For setting them up, again, you need a team which can basically install the required software on it. Then you need a place where you can keep these servers. So you rent some apartment, put those servers over there, connect it to a power backup kind of a facility where even if the electricity goes, there is a generator which is going to power up your server. And at the same time, you basically also contact a service provider, an internet service provider, which is going to give you good internet to your servers. Seems everything sorted, right? So now you've invested a huge chunk of money on your application, right? And now you have made it available on the servers where thousands of people can access it. Okay, now the application again becomes a hit overnight, and now there are more customers who basically want to access your application. And now the servers that you bought, they're not enough. So what you basically happens is uh, you get to know, okay, so more customers are using your application now, and now you suddenly have to buy more servers because obviously the servers that you have currently, they're not giving you the right kind of performance that you need. So again, you have to invest some money. Now, take one thing into account, guys, that servers are very expensive. At the same time, you've also rented a place. You are giving money for the internet connection. You are giving money for the electricity. So there's a lot of investment required over here to make your application available online to hundred thousands of users or even a million people, right? And obviously, because you've just started out, you are not getting the kind of money that you're supposed to do, because you're also doing marketing for your application. You're also giving a lot of discounts on your application, because of which you're not getting the right kind of revenue in, right? So what should you do? So as and when the traffic will grow again and again, you will have to buy more servers, and that will require more investment from your side. So you get fed up of the solution, of this particular situation, and now you're looking of ways to basically solve it. Now, if this kind of situation arose before the year 2006 or 2005, well, you didn't have any other option but to shut your company or take some loan from a bank and pay the interest also to the bank while you're repaying, the amount to them, right? But now with cloud providers such as Azure, such as AWS, such as Google Cloud Platform, this has become very easy. So, what is this cloud platform and how is it going to help you? Let's understand that. So, guys, with a cloud platform, what you can do is you can rent infrastructure, right? So now let's say you have an application which is ready and you want to make it available to the world. So what you will do is you can basically, go to Azure and you can just tell them, okay, you know what, I need 32 GB of RAM of servers and around 16 core of CPUs, right? And I want 24/7 electricity. I want that server to never go down. Is that possible? So Azure people say, yes, that is possible. All you have to do is monthly, you just have to pay the rent for our servers. We will manage all the electricity, we will manage all the internet connection, we will manage everything which is required from the hardware perspective. All you have to do is take care of your application which you're deploying to the server and nothing else. And in lieu of that, you just have to pay the rent of the server that you're using. Now, let's say after 1 month, you do not require the servers anymore. So there is no security that you have to pay. There is nothing you have to pay. Just pay the amount that you use the server for, and that is about it that we require. Nothing else. At the same time, let's say tomorrow you need more servers that you want to add while your customers are growing. So all you have to do is take some more servers on rent and apply to your existing fleet of infrastructure, and you're set. And it will hardly take 2 to 3 minutes to do this, right? And again, you just have to pay the rent of the servers that you are basically going to use. Okay. So now with this, they also give you a feature wherein, let's say the load increases on your application, the CPU usage of the servers which are hosting your application, it increases. So automatically new servers will be added to your fleet. And as and when the CPU usage goes down a particular number, it can also start removing servers from your fleet, right? Or removing servers from your infrastructure. And this is what is called as auto scaling. And with this, you never have to now worry about how many servers you need, how many people are there on your website. Why? Because everything is being managed automatically, and at the same time, you do not have to buy servers now. You can just rent them and use it as long as you want them, right? So this came to be a very good deal for you, and that is exactly how millions of companies worldwide have now shifted to cloud. Why? Because Azure or AWS or any other Google Cloud platform for that matter is giving you servers on rent, right? And the rent is as low as $0.005 per hour, right? So that is how cheap the rent is for the servers that you're basically trying to deploy. And with this, the internet is managed with them. Even if the hardware outdates, let's say tomorrow, they will upgrade your hardware for free. You don't have to pay them anything extra other than your rent. They are going to manage everything. And because of this, your usage is going up. Why? Because now your application is available all the time. And at the same time, the traffic also is being managed automatically, so that the new servers are added to your fleet and are removed for your fleet as and when the traffic increases or decreases. Okay. So this is the story of a startup, why it was using Azure. Now let me show you some of the companies who are using Azure today, right? Or are using a cloud platform today, specifically Microsoft Azure. So these are all the companies who are using Microsoft Azure for all kind of needs of infrastructure, right? And they just have their software over it. So companies like Toyota, Honeywell, Lufthansa, LinkedIn, Samsung, Xerox, BMW, and even Microsoft itself. So any Microsoft website that you go to is also hosted on Microsoft Azure, right? So all these companies are on Azure for the very same reason that I've just explained you. First thing is cost effectiveness. Second thing is distribution of work, because now you don't have to have your own team to manage your servers. And at the same time, you also are can be reliable on the infrastructure which Azure has given you, because it would have been a pain to manage the hardware, a team which is going to monitor your hardware all the time if you were to set it up all by yourself. Okay, so now that we have understood what Azure is exactly and why we should use it, now we will move along and understand some Azure services and its pricing. So Suhas is saying, how much does it cost to owning a server versus buying from cloud? Okay, so it depends on the size of a server. So let's say if you let's compare the price of having a PC today, right? So if you buy a PC which has a very good GPU, right? Let's say you buy a 2080 Ti graphic card with an i9 core CPU which has around 16 cores, right? And a 64 gigs of RAM which has around 3000 megahertz of speed. So this setup for just the CPU is going to cost you around 3 to 4 lakhs. And now this is a PC. Now imagine if you have to set up a server, and this PC will now be multiple times in the server rack that you have, which is basically going to cater to 1000, 2000 people. So the cost of this setup is going to be around 6 to 7 lakhs per server rack, right? Now imagine when your server hits 100,000 users or 200,000 users, this cost is going to increase exponentially. Now, obviously, you will have to manage it according to the revenue that you are generating, right? But at the same time, the revenue will take some time to come in, right? And at the same time, if your users are increasing exponentially, which is a good thing for you though, but let's say if you're not able to manage the demand of the users, which is basically the infrastructure that you have, it again becomes a problem. Let's say you have that kind of money to buy your own infrastructure, but with every increasing demand, that infrastructure will take some time to come to your office. At the same time, you will also have to take a headache of managing or hiring a team of your own to basically manage these servers, right? And obviously, when you hire a team, you also have to deal with the problems that the team is facing. You have to also deal with, what are the kind of tasks that you will be assigning them, etc. So it becomes a headache for you, because you basically wanted to open a app which is basically a software. So not only you now have to manage the software, but you are also going to manage the hardware side of the hardware software, thus giving less time to your application, which probably if you have spent more time on it, you could have increased the revenue of your company, right? And that is exactly why basically companies prefer cloud providers. Okay, Santosh is saying, what about security charges? So Santosh, everything you just have to include the rental charges, security from the hardware perspective, security from the perspective of if you're deploying a firewall on Azure, so that firewall's foolproofness is all guaranteed by Microsoft Azure. Now think about it like this: let's say you have your own application that you're trying to launch in the internet space. Now obviously the kind of security aspects that you can create around your application, the kind of money that you can invest around your application just for the security needs, whatever that money is, it's going to be always less than what Azure has already invested on their infrastructure, given the fact that Microsoft itself is hosting each and every service of theirs on Microsoft Azure. Okay, so you can be rest assured that if you are hosting your application on a cloud like Azure, it's getting best in class infrastructure and at the same time, the security best practices. Now, obviously, you will have to make sure that your application from the software perspective is secure as well. That is not something that Azure can guarantee, but the infrastructure that you're deploying on cannot be tampered with. That is something that Azure will guarantee. So, Monty, why Azure? Again, a very good question. So, I just told you about why cloud platforms are basically, preferred rather than owning your own infrastructure. Now, why are we learning Azure today? Let's try to answer that question. So, as you all know, that Amazon Web Services is the largest cloud provider in the market right now, right? And when I say the largest cloud provider, it has around 41 to 42% market share. Now, because it is the largest cloud provider in the market, that obviously means that there are more jobs. And because there are more jobs, there are more people who are trying to apply for the job and hence more competition. When you talk about Microsoft Azure, it's the second largest cloud provider. Now let's first talk from the market perspective. Now, because it's a second largest cloud provider, companies which are using AWS right now, they're also taking into account a secondary cloud provider for their infrastructure needs. Why? Because let's say tomorrow, the whole of AWS servers go down. Now they do not want it to impact their own application. So what they do is they create a redundancy in place, and what they do is they manage their servers on Azure as well, right? And now they're using two cloud providers instead of one. This is from the market perspective, and that's why you can see the growth of Azure has been dramatic in the past 2 3 years, right? The kind of growth that AWS has seen is less than the kind of growth that Azure is seeing from, if you take into account the last 3 4 years. At the same time, Azure is a lot cheaper when you compare it with other cloud providers, and the sole reason for that is the Microsoft products. So if you are using any Microsoft product on, let's say, AWS, on Google Cloud Platform, it is obviously going to charge you more than Microsoft product that you get on Azure. Why? Because Azure is basically owned by Microsoft. So because of that, even the pricing is in control, and hence it becomes more cheap for people who want to use Microsoft software. Third thing is, now because the AWS is the largest cloud provider, there is more competition over there. Azure does not have much of competition, but at the same time, since companies have started considering Azure, and because of the growth rate of Azure that we have seen in the past 3 4 years, there's an acute shortage of people who basically are certified in Azure and at the same time know Azure that well as well. Nowadays, what is happening is people who know AWS, they are the only ones who are also trying to, control the infrastructure which is there on Azure in the same company, right? But that is not helping out because a lot of features are different between Microsoft Azure and AWS. And now companies basically want to have a separate guy who can manage their separate cloud platform that they have. Now, obviously, if you talk about senior cloud profiles, such as senior cloud engineers or senior cloud architects, now these guys, they are not just limited to learn only AWS or only Microsoft Azure. In the long run, when you see yourself, you will actually have to learn more than one cloud provider. That is, some companies expect you to know both AWS and Microsoft Azure. Some companies expect you to know all the three: Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and AWS as well. But when you're starting out in the cloud domain, it is recommended that you start with Microsoft Azure because it will be a lot easier for you to switch to the cloud domain because of the less competition, right? And while you're also growing for the next level of profile that you want to go for, then you should also learn AWS, you should also learn Google Cloud Platform. Okay, so SK is saying, what is the difference between Azure and AWS services? Well, SK, when you talk about it from the features perspective, so what are the features that AWS is providing which Azure is not? All the features are same, but the way you implement them using the services is different, right? The steps that you have to do a particular task in Azure is obviously going to be different from what you have to do in AWS. because they are two different companies. They have built their own products separately, and obviously because of that, the way of implementation is also very different, right? So that is the only difference. But when you talk it from features perspective, both the cloud providers are neck to neck. They are giving each other competition in terms of the feature that they offer, and because of that, all the features or most of the features are same. Okay. So how Azure is different from AWS, and what is the basic process for cloud is same. So Samir, I think I just answered your question. So both of them have the same features. It's just that because they are two different products, the same thing can be implemented in both the cloud providers in different kind of ways. Azure services. So these are some of the common services in Microsoft Azure that we are basically going to discuss now. Okay. So let's talk about the most common service which every one of you is going to use once you start using Microsoft Azure, and that service is nothing but the virtual machine service. So guys, the virtual machine is basically it's an infrastructure as a service, or in other words, it's basically a server. So all that we have been discussing till now, even in the example that I told you earlier, was about using a server, right? So whenever you deploy a server in Microsoft Azure, that is nothing but a virtual machine, right? So a virtual machine is just like your own laptop or personal computer or PC, right? It's just that a virtual machine can have whatever kind of resources you want, right? So when you deploy a virtual machine, you choose the amount of RAM that you need, you choose the amount of CPU that you need, and then you deploy it, right? So that is exactly what a virtual machine is, right? For example, in your PC, if you have a 32 GB RAM right now, you cannot just change it right now. You will have to buy some parts, include it in your PC setup, and only then that configuration will increase. But with virtual machines, the scene is you can do that in a matter of seconds, right? And how can you do that? Because the infrastructure or the hardware that is basically made available to you by Microsoft Azure is virtualized, which basically means if your virtual machine is being launched on, let's say, a certain hardware, it might be the case that the same hardware might be accommodating 100 or 200 of virtual machines as well. So that is the kind of uh, resources which are available on the hardware, but the hardware can virtualize some of the resources and can make those resources available to you as a separate machine. That is exactly what virtualization is, right? So a virtual machine in Azure, like I again said, it's basically a server that you deploy, right? And these servers are basically going to have the required RAM, the required CPU that you specify. So that's what a virtual machine is, right? Then the second kind of service is called app service. So what is an app service? So an app service is basically a platform as a service, right? And in that, what you get is, so let's say you deploy a virtual machine, right? So when you deploy a virtual machine, what happens is you get a screen to a computer which probably has the Linux operating system or the Windows operating system installed on it, and then you can use it as you want, right? But in app service, this thing is not there. In app service, what happens is you are given a platform. So you're not given the whole machine to work on. You basically are given a platform, which basically gives you a dashboard kind of a view. And in that dashboard, you can only do the actions which are specified by the service that you're deploying. For example, in app service, you can deploy your own website. But if you have to deploy your own website, let's say you want to do that on Azure virtual machine. So first, what you'll have to do is, let's say your website is based on .NET. So you will have to install .NET on the server, or let's say your website is, based on Apache software. So you will have to install the Apache software. If it's a PHP website, you will install the PHP software. And once all the softwares are installed, only then you can deploy your website on it, or you can copy the files of your website on it, and then your website will become available. But the scene with app services is that everything is deployed automatically. So you just tell Azure what is the kind of website that you are going to deal with. So let's say if you have a PHP website, what you do is you click on app services, you tell Microsoft, okay, so I'm going to use a PHP website on the service that I'm deploying. And Microsoft themselves, they basically set up the environment for you. They install the softwares and everything, And all they do is they give you a button which is on the dashboard that you will see, right? And on that button you can see, I mean, through that button, if you click on it, you will be able to upload your website. And once your website is uploaded, it will automatically be deployed on the server, which is basically deployed in the background, right? So the purpose of having an app service versus a virtual machine is to make your life easy, so you do not have to deal with the operating system directly. Azure manages the operating system on your behalf. It manages all the softwares based on your behalf, and all you do is you just deploy your application. So that is what an app service is, right? Similarly, the third kind of very common service which will be used in Microsoft Azure is the blob storage. So a blob storage is just like Google Drive. So I'm pretty sure everyone of you might have used Google Drive in any of your careers, right? A Google Drive is just like, uploading your file on the cloud, and that's about it. And that is exactly what a blob storage also is. So on blob storage, you can also upload your files, but what you can do with those files is a lot different than what you can do with files on Google Cloud. For example, in Blob, you also have the option of, keeping those files in a very primitive kind of storage, which is going to reduce your costs drastically. And at the same time, you will see that when you're using Google Drive, you have a limit to the kind of files that you can upload. When you sign up on Google Cloud, the storage I think that you get is around 30 GB. So 30 GB data is free for you that you can upload, and after 30 GB, you will have to buy some storage where you can upload that data, upload more data. But when you're using blob storage, you do not have any restriction of how much of data can you upload. It's unlimited data that you can upload, and at the same time, you are only charged for the data that you upload per month. Let's say you uploaded 1 terabytes of data, so you will only be charged for the amount of 1 terabytes of data, and nothing less, nothing more. Now, those pricings are also very different. So if you want very high speed download and upload to your file that you have uploaded on blob storage, the pricing will be different. Let's say you say that this is a backup file that you're putting on blob storage, and probably you will never use it again. You just want it to be saved in a very safe place. So in that case, what you can do is you can change the storage class of your blob storage, and that will almost make the cost of uploading and keeping the file 1/10, right? And similarly, there are a lot more features as well, and that is exactly what blob storage is. So again, if you want to understand it, it's just like Google Drive, but with a lot more features. So that's about what blob storage is, right? Then you have something called as file storage. So file storage is just like having a network drive, right, which you can map to your computer. So I just talked about Google Drive. Google Drive, you cannot map it as a C drive or a D drive on your system. But with file storage, if you deploy it on Microsoft Azure, it is again, a very unlimited kind of a service where you can decide how many GBs or terabytes you need. And once you've defined that application in Microsoft Azure, you can basically connect it to your computer and mount it as a local disk drive. And then you can basically copy files to it or retrieve files from it as you want. So this is what a file storage is. Now the cool thing about file storage is that multiple people can basically mount this drive on their computer at the same time, and they can use it for as a shared drive between them while they're working on it, right? So that is what a file storage is. So each of these service basically plays a different role when you're deploying an application on production cloud, right? Then the next kind of service that you have is called virtual networks. So virtual networks is just like, in your office you have networks, right? So if you want to deploy a network for a set of machines that you have deployed in Microsoft Azure, the way you can do that is by making use of virtual networks. Now, again, you can create n number of virtual networks in your Azure account where you can have n number of servers. And these virtual networks again can have n number of features that you can explore and implement, which I think you will learn more as you start using the virtual network service, right? And the final kind of service that we're going to understand is load balancers, right? So what is a load balancer? A load balancer is basically, it's more of used in production, and probably for a guy who does not know about load balancers, even if they're using it, they will never get to know about it, right? And there is actually a service that we are actually going to make use of in today's session as well, where I'll show you the reason people use load balancers. So I give you the example of a story in the beginning, right, where you can add more servers for your application, and then as you add more servers, more number of users can basically be dealt with, right? So how does that happen? How can you add hundreds of servers and then decide where a user exactly is going to land on, or which server he is going to land on for basically his needs? For example, if you go to flipkart.com or you go to amazon.com, so when you go there, you automatically are given, if your internet connection is good, your application loads just fine, right? So where is the data on that application coming from? That data is basically coming from cloud, is basically coming from a fleet of servers which have been deployed on cloud. And to one of those servers you connect, and that is where your data is basically coming from. So you never decide which server you have to connect to. That is automatically chosen for you, right? And that is exactly what a load balancer does. It distributes the load equally among multiple servers which are deployed in your infrastructure. Okay, more about this we will understand as we move along. So guys, this is a brief about the Azure services in Microsoft Azure. Now let's go ahead and talk about the pricing. So the moment you sign up on Azure, what you get is 1 month free usage of Microsoft Azure with a free credit of around 13,300 rupees or $200, right? So you can use this amount to learn and understand Microsoft Azure, right? So you can deploy as many servers as you want, and you can use them until and unless you exhaust the $200 or the 13,300 rupees credit that you have in your Microsoft account the moment you sign up, right? So this was something which is very developer friendly, which Azure has done. That the moment you sign up, it makes the services available for you free so that you can practice them and learn more about it. Okay. And other than that, there are some set of free services as well, which are valid for a lifetime. So whenever you're using Azure, this is some of these services are valid for 1 year. For example, when you're using Linux virtual machines or Windows virtual machines on Microsoft Azure, 750 hours every month will be given free of cost to you of the server type B1S VM, right? So if you are using the servers, the first 750 hours of those servers will be free of cost, that is, will not be charged to you while you're using those servers, right? So now, guys, let's move on and start off with the hands-on. And what I'm first going to do is I'm going to explain you what we are basically going to make, and then we are going to go ahead and start it. Okay. So guys, let's first understand the website architecture that we're going to deploy on Azure today. All right. So what we are basically going to do is we will have two sets of servers, right? So the first set of servers would be in the US region, and the other set of servers would be in the Indian region, right? Now, since these will be multiple servers, what we are also going to do is we are basically going to have a load balancer on top of them, and through this load balancer, if you are in the US region, if you go to a particular domain, basically it should be pointed to the US server automatically. And once you are pointed to the US servers, your load balancer should basically divide the load between the people or between the servers that you have in your fleet, right? Similarly, if let's say you are from India, so you will also be accessing the same domain, which is this, right? And once you access it, you will be basically pointed to the Indian servers. And in Indian servers, we are going to have a load balancer, which is basically going to route your request to a specific Indian server. Okay, so this is the architecture that we are going to deploy today. Any questions with regards to this architecture, let me know. If not, let's jump on to our Azure portal, and then I'm going to show you how you can create this architecture. Any questions, guys? So let me repeat it again. So first thing what we'll do is we'll basically deploy some servers in US and deploy some servers in India, right? And these servers will have a load balancer on top of them. So now what is going to happen is if 5 servers are hosting the same application, your user does not have to be concerned about which of these 5 servers he has to reach. He will basically reach to a common point, and that common point will be the load balancer, which is basically going to route the request based on which server is going to be more free. Okay, and that is exactly what we are going to do with the US servers as well. Okay, so guys, this is the architecture. So Palani Kumar is saying how redirection happens between two regions. So Palani, there is going to be a separate entity over here. That entity is basically called a traffic manager, right? So that traffic manager has a feature wherein it can see according to which region the request is coming from, and which of the servers, that is either the Indian server or the US servers, based on which request, where it sends the request and where it can deal the request more faster, it will route the request over there. And obviously that basically has to do with the distance between the customer and the server. So let's say if you are in India and you are trying to access Azure project.tk, right? So obviously, if your request is being served from the US servers, the ping will be more, or the time it will take to to respond to your query would be more than the servers which are basically deployed in the Indian region. So Indian region, if you are from India, the servers can reply to you more faster. Similarly, if a guy is from US, right, if he's trying to ping a particular website, and that website has servers in US, obviously they can serve him faster than servers which are going to be there in the Indian region, right? So this is the architecture that we are going to deploy today. And this is basically how even a modern e-commerce application basically works. So if you have a look at Flipkart or Amazon, these are the things that they implement into the background, which normal customers usually don't know about, but they basically use every day. Okay, and that is exactly what we are going to do today in this session. So Sarvana is saying same server can be configured for each country. If you use the same server, Sarvana, then in that case, first of all, let's say you only configure the server in the US region. Then in that case, the people who are there in India, they will experience more lag, or they will experience more time for their application to load. And that's why we need servers in the same region of where your customer base is going to exist, right? So if your customer base is existing both in US and in India, you need to have this kind of an architecture where both the customer base are going to be redirected to their own set of servers based on which server is going to reply the most easiest. And I think you would have also seen this with Google. So let's say if we uh, go to let's say a browser. So let's say I type in google.com. So you will automatically see the moment I type google.com, I'm automatically routed to the Indian server. So as you can see, it's written India over here, right? If I type in google.co.uk, you can again see I'm still on the Indian server. Why? Because every time I'm trying to go to a different Google website, I'm always logged to the server which is more nearer to me, and that is the Indian Google, right? So no matter which URL you are entering over here, you're always being redirected to the Indian Google, right? But if you want to bypass this, so let's say you connect to a VPN, right? Let's say you connect to a VPN and you connect to a particular country. So whichever country you will be connecting to, let's say you connected to you connect to France. So now when you will be going to your browser typing in google.com, now you will be redirected to google.fr, right? So that is exactly how it works, what we are going to implement in today's hands-on as well. Let's go ahead, and the first thing that we would do is go to the Azure dashboard. So the URL is portal.azure.com. So once you guys log in or sign up on Microsoft Azure, this is how your dashboard is going to look like. Now I already have some resources that I have deployed over here, so you don't have to worry about them, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a resource, and once I've created a resource, now I will choose what kind of resource that I want to deploy. So when I'm creating a new, now it's asking me what kind of resource that I want to deploy. Let's say I want to launch a Linux server. So a Linux server is basically either an Ubuntu server, or it could be a CentOS server. Or if I want to launch a Windows server, I can choose this Windows, or I can choose some other operating system as well. So this gives me limited option over here. These are the popular options that people basically deploy. So what we can do is we can just search for virtual machines. I can click on that service, and as you can see, I have some machines which are already running over here. So we are going to ignore them. So first, let's deploy our first virtual machine. So we'll click on add, and now I can fill in all these things that I want. Okay. So first things first, it will ask you a resource group to basically deploy it in. So a resource group is nothing but it's basically a logical grouping of all the resources that you're going to deploy on the Azure cloud. Okay, so what we can do is we can just click on create new, and let's say this is demo hyphen webinar. This is the resource group that I'm basically going to create right now. Okay, so the resource group has been created, and now we have to enter the virtual machine name. So let's say it's Indian server. So this is the server that we are going to deploy, right? Next thing that I'm going to see is the region that I want to deploy it in. So it's in central India, which works out for me, which is great. What is the operating system that I want to launch? So these are the different kind of operating systems that I can choose between. So I have some Microsoft options, then I have Oracle option, I have the Linux options. So whichever I want, I can choose. So for this demo, I'm choosing the Ubuntu server. Then here I can choose the size of the virtual machine that I want to deploy. So let's say I want to deploy the lowest on this list, which is 1 vCPU and 1 GB of memory. So let's choose this. Then it is asking me what is the authentication type that I want to choose. Do I want to log in using a public key, or do I want to log in using a password? So let's choose password. Let's give some username over here. Let's give the username, let's say, as Intellipaat. And now let's give some password as well. Okay, it says the value must be between 12 and 72 characters. Okay, let's give that value. Okay, now which ports do I want to be opened on the firewall? So whenever you want to connect to a Linux machine, you basically connect using the SSH protocol. Okay, and the SSH protocol basically always works on port 22. So port 22 is going to be allowed in the firewall for us. Let's click on next. So now in disks, we are being asked which kind of disk do you want? Do you want premium SSD? Do you want standard HDD? Do you want standard SSD? So basically, this is going to affect your performance. So HDD is basically a disk-based hard drive. Then you have solid state hard drives, and then you have premium solid state hard drives as well. So all these three will have different IO values. For this demo, let's choose standard SSD, right? And then let's click on next. Now it's going to ask me where do I want this server to be deployed. So it's automatically creating a virtual network for me, which is called demo webinar vnet, right? And it is automatically creating a subnet as well. It is assigning a public IP also to my server, etc. So we'll keep everything at default. We'll click on next. Now it is asking me what kind of monitoring do I want on my server, right? So I don't want any monitoring, so I'll just switch it off and click on next again. This can also be left, so you can just click on next, next again. And finally, now you can basically just review all your settings, right? So it says verification failed, so probably we did not fill out some information. Let's verify that. So we'll just click here. Okay, it says the requested size for resource is currently not available in central India. So it's saying the size that I selected, which is basically this is not available. So let's choose some other size. Let's choose, let's say, an 8 GB machine or a 2 GB machine, let's say. Let's click on review plus create. Okay, even this is not available. All right. So sometimes the region that you choose, they might not have the required size that you want to launch. And in that case, you just have to go ahead and choose for a size that might be available. I think if I go for a premium size, it should be available. Give me a second. Okay, so you can see there's a high demand for all these servers, and that's why they're all used, right? So what we can do is we can just go back, and none of the servers are available in this region. So let's go to some other region. Let's select South India. I think that should have some servers available for us. Okay, so here some servers are available. Great. So what we can choose, let's choose the same size that we selected earlier. Click on review plus create. And as you can see, the validation has now passed. So let's click on create now. And with this, now my server is getting launched. Okay, now it will take some time for this server to get deployed. But basically what we have done is we have deployed one server in the South India region, which basically is going to make use of an Ubuntu server. Okay, so let's go back to the dashboard and let me show you the resource group, which is basically getting created. Okay, there are a lot of resource groups over here, but what you can basically refer to is this. So demo webinar is the resource group that I created, right? So now let's go ahead inside the demo webinar. And here you can see the resource that you've just deployed, the Indian server. It is getting deployed in here. So as you can see, the deployment has got succeeded. Great. So let's deploy a US server as well. So again, let's click on add on the resource group. Let's create a second resource group for our US servers so that we can differentiate between uh, the resources that we are going to deploy. And let's deploy it in the West US region. Okay, click on review plus create, and finally create this resource group. Okay, so the resource group has got created, and now I can just go to that resource group and I can deploy some resources over here. So let's do the same thing. Let's deploy a virtual machine again in the US resource group. So I'll just click on create a virtual machine, US server 1. Let's give this name. Let's deploy it in West US. Okay, this is the image that I want to launch. This is the size that is automatically selected. Let's hope it is available. Let's give the username as Intellipaat and the password as this. I think I'll keep the same password which I used for my previous server. Okay, click on disks. I think rest everything we can leave at default. Only in management we will turn the monitoring off and click on review plus create. So as you can see, the price is just 80 paisa per hour, which is great. So we'll just create it now. And now a server is being launched in the US region. Okay. Now to make it more authentic, let's deploy one virtual machine more, so that we have two. And on top of these two virtual machines, then we will deploy a load balancer as well. And we'll also figure out a way so that when we basically hit the load balancer, we automatically get to know which server basically we are trying to connect to. Okay. So while this is being deployed, let's deploy one more virtual machine in India. So let's add one more. It will be in the resource group called demo webinar. Virtual machine name, it will be Indian 2. It will be in South India region. Same image, same uh, server configuration. Username would be Intellipaat, and let's give the password same. Okay, let's go to management, uh, turn off boot diagnostics, and now let's create it. So in networking, let me see. Yes, so we are under the same uh, network that we created earlier. And now let's just go ahead and create this. All right, so with this, guys, we have now deployed uh, 2 servers in the India region, and let's do the same for US as well. Let's deploy one more last uh, VM for our US region as well. So this will be in the US resource group, right? And the virtual machine is going to be named as uh, US server 2. It's going to be in the West US, same machine config. Username would be Intellipaat, and password would be the same what I entered for others. Again, finally, we'll go to management, turn out diagnostics, click on review plus create, and create the VM now. Okay, so now this will be deployed in the background, and what we can do is we can start configuring our server now. Okay, so let's head over to the US server, sorry, the Indian servers first, and let's try to configure the first server that we deployed. So this is the IP address of this server. Let's connect to it. So for connecting, you will first need a terminal. So people who are using Windows, what you can do is you can download a software called Putty, right? So you just have to go to putty.org, go to download Putty, just click over here. And then what you have to do is you have to download the Putty 64-bit version, which is this, right? And once you download this, uh, you know, you will see a window like this, right? So in this window, all you have to do is, okay, 1 second. Yes, this is the window that you will see. So just enter the IP address over here of the server. So in this case, the server's IP address is this. Just enter that over here and click on open, right? And that is about it. Same screen, then you will see as I'm seeing right now. Okay, so I'll just enter SSH. So people who are there on Linux or Mac, you just have to enter this command. So SSH, Intellipaat, the IP address, hit enter, type in yes, it'll ask the password. So just enter the password of the server. Even the putty guys will see the screen. And then you are now logged into your your Indian server in the Azure region. So this is your first server. Let's connect to a second server as well. So SSH Intellipaat and then the second server is this. Let's copy the IP for this server as well, put in here, and now it's asking the password. And yes, you are now connected to your second server as well. Okay, what I've done is I've deployed 4 servers, 2 in the US region, 2 in the India region, and now I've connected to the servers in the India region. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and configure these servers now. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to basically install a web server software which is called Apache 2. So in order to install that, first we'll have to update the machine. So let's update it by typing in the command sudo apt-get update. And once the servers are updated, now let's install the software by using this command, which is sudo apt-get install Apache 2. Okay, so the software is being installed over here. We can do the same on the other server as well. First update it, and once it's updated, we will install the Apache 2 software. So both the machines now have the Apache 2 software installed, and now let's try to see if that software is working or not. So ideally what should happen is if you install the software and if you copy the IP address of your server and try to paste it in the browser, you should be able to see the website that you have just deployed. But what happens is because we have not opened the firewall for the HTTP protocol, that's why we are not able to see this web page right now. You remember we only opened the port 22. So whenever your browser is trying to interact with your server, it always tries to interact on port 80, and that is exactly why you're not seeing the web page right now. So what we can do is, let's say this is my Indian server 2. So all I have to go to is networking, and in networking I have to add an inbound rule. So in the rule, I have to specify the destination port, which is port 80, and it is going to be allowed, and I just click on add. So with this rule in place, what is going to happen is the port 80 is going to be opened in the firewall, and then once the rule has been created now, right? So this will take around 30 to 40 seconds to basically get updated in the main firewall of Azure, and then we should be able to see this website. So let's wait for some 30 to 35 seconds. And while this is happening, let's also open the port 80 on the first Indian server. So we'll just go to the first Indian server, go to networking, and add port 80 over here. Okay, so this rule is now getting created, and if I go back, you can see on this IP address, I am able to see the Apache 2 page. So this is the Indian 2's IP address, and we're going to change this web page in a little while, and I'll show you how you can do that. So to replace this file, what you have to do is you have to go to /var/www/html and then replace index.html. So that is exactly what we are going to do now. So let's go to Indian 2 server. Let's go to the file location which was mentioned. And in this file location, now let's delete the index.html which is present, and let's add one more index.html. So to create or edit any file, you have to make use of the command sudo nano. So nano is basically just like notepad that you have in Windows, right? So notepad opens a notepad for you to write in or edit documents. Similarly, in Ubuntu, there is a text editor called nano. Right? So we're going to open that, and as you can see, it is now creating a file called index.html. So let's write a very simple HTML code over here, which is basically we're just going to have one line, which is saying welcome to the Indian server 2, right? Let's write this HTML. Done. And now if I refresh this, you can see it says welcome to Indian server 2, which is great. So now let's do the same thing for our first Indian server as well. So right now, if I go to this IP address in a new tab, I'll be seeing the default Apache 2 page. Let's replace that with this code. So what I'm doing is I'll first go to the file path. And now I'm going to paste the code that we wrote over here into this file and change this to welcome to Indian server 1. Okay, done. And now if I refresh it, great. So now I have two IP addresses where if I go from the browser to these IP addresses, I am going to see Indian server 1 and Indian server 2. So let me give these IP addresses to you guys as well. So just open your chat section and you should get these IP addresses. Just try it in your browser and let me know if you are able to see these web pages. Okay, while that is happening, let me also take up some questions. So Aparna is saying, can you change the color of one of the servers? So I don't have to do that, Aparna, because you can see it clearly says Indian 2 over here, and it clearly says Indian server over here, right? And at the same time, the color is actually a bit different. So if I'm using Indian server 1, in that case, the commands are in green. And if I'm using Indian server 2, then the commands are in white. So that is how you can make out. So Mita is saying sudo nano is similar to sudo vim. Yes, Mita, absolutely same. Rajesh says, yes, we can see it's working perfect. Great. Samir is saying, yes, we are able to access the IP address, able to access. Great, guys. So if you're able to access the server, that means our Indian configuration of the servers is correct. And now what we are going to do is we are going to put a load balancer on top of them. Okay. So let's see how we can do that. So there are a lot of type of load balancers that basically you can deploy. The load balancer that we are going to deploy today is basically an application gateway. Okay, so let's go to application gateway. And in application gateway, all we have to do is, so there are, yeah, so we'll just click on add. And now it's going to ask us which resource group we want to deploy it in. So we will, let's first deploy it for the US region. So we are going to say US servers, application gateway, let's say US server 1. The region is West US. And virtual network, this is the virtual network we want to deploy it in. Now, this is the error that you will get. It says the subnet must only have application gateway. Now, in order to have this, what you'll have to do is you will have to create a subnet which is not going to have any other resource, right? So how we can do that is just go to your Azure portal and then go to virtual networks. Now the network that we want to configure is the US servers, right? And in this, if you go to subnets, you can see there's only one subnet right now, which is the default subnet. So let's add one more subnet, and let's the address range for this. Now the address range can be a little confusing to you, so let me make it as simple as possible for you guys. So right now you can see that address range over here is 10.3.2.0/24. So /24 basically says how many IP addresses can be included. So if you type in /24, it gives you 250 IP addresses in the range of 10.3.2. It could be .1, .2, .3, .19, .99, right, etc. So that could be the range. So similarly, we'll just replicate this and we'll specify 10.3 dot instead of 2 we can specify, let's say, 5.0/24, right? And let's say this is for our AG subnet. Okay, so it says the subnet is not contained within this address space of the virtual network. Okay, let's solve that as well. So we will first have to go to address space. So we can so here the address space is this. So instead of this range, I can give a better range, which can be /16. So the lower the number, the higher number of ranges you get. So I have specified it /16 over here. So what this basically tells us that the whole virtual network can have IP address in these ranges, and obviously the subnets have to lie between these ranges, right? So my default subnet is obviously within the range of 10.3. Now I'm going to specify a subnet range for my application gateway, which is going to be this. Okay, and let's call it AG-subnet. All right, let's click on OK. So this subnet is now being added. Okay, it's been added. And now if you go back to US servers VNet, you can see that AG subnet we can choose now. Okay, and it's not giving any error now. Okay, so now let's click on next. And now it is asking me what will be the front end of this load balancer. The front end is always a IP address. So there will be one IP address of the load balancer that we will be hitting. And that IP address is basically going to route to the backend servers that we have. So let's add, let's call this as AG-IP-US. Okay, next. Now it's asking me to add backends. So backends, we can add, we can click on add a backend pool. Let's name this backend pool as US-pool, and let's add the virtual machines in this. So the target type would be a virtual machine, and it could be US server 2. Let's add this first, and again a virtual machine, and let's choose US server 1 is not being listed over here. So only the servers which are in the virtual network of this application gateway can be added. So I think the server 1 that we deployed is not in the same virtual network. Let's verify that. So let's go to virtual machines and let's go to, okay, so I think this is a problem. So our US server 1 is in a different network. Okay, let's try to fix that. So it's a good thing we did not configure US servers yet. So what we'll do is we'll just delete this server, that is US server 1. And while it is being deleted, let's quickly add a new virtual machine in the resource group of US servers. Let's name this virtual machine as server 1 US, or US server 1. It will be in the West US. The operating system will be Ubuntu server. This is the size of the virtual machine. Username would be Intellipaat. The authentication type would be password. And as you can see, the deletion happened automatically in the background. And now let's specify the password. Right. Let's go to management, turn off the boot diagnostics, and click on review plus create. Okay, so now my virtual machine is getting created. Now it will take a minute or so to get this ready, guys. So we have now deployed the US servers correctly, and what we can do now is let's connect to them and let's try to configure them, right? Before we can actually go ahead and connect to the application gateway. Okay, so let's go to US server 1. Okay, it's taking some time to load. 1 second, guys. Okay, so this is a US server 1. This is the IP address. Let's try to connect to it. All right, so we are connected to US server 1. Let's try to connect to US server 2 as well. Okay, this is the IP address. Great. So we're connected to both the servers. On the first server, let's update the machine. On the second server as well, let's update the machine. So same steps as we did earlier. And once they're updated, let's install the Apache 2 software on this. Okay, so it is being installed. Similarly over here as well, let's install the software. Okay, so while this is being installed, let's copy the code that we have to put on this server as well. Now it's taking some time to load. Let's give it that time. So Mita is saying, by seeing how can we find whether it's a public or private IP? Well, it clearly says over here, Mita, that it's public IP. But I think the other way to recognize it is that you know the range that you deployed, right? So if you deployed a 172 or a 10 dot range, you can see that range over here and you can decide. But other than that, it is labeled as well that it's a private IP address. Okay, so that should clear it out. Rajesh is saying, is Apache a web server? If not Apache, what else we can use? So Rajesh, if you don't want to use Apache server, you can also make use of Nginx. So Nginx is basically again a web server which is doing exactly what Apache 2 does, and but at the same time it's a different company, right? So it also hosts HTTP websites for you. So if you don't want to use this software, you can use that. So let's put the website for the US server now. So this is US server 1. So let's put that info there. Similarly, let's edit this as US server 2. Great. Now let's open these ports in the servers. So this is server 2. Let's go to networking. Let's add the port 80 rule. And while this rule is being created, let's do the same for US server 1 as well. And now what we can do is we can just put in these IP addresses in our browser to verify whether these are working or not. So US server 1 is working. Similarly, let's check US server 2 as well. And that is working as well. So let me give you these IP addresses again in the chat, so you guys can verify if these are working or not. And if they are, I think we are good to go with at least the VM architecture, and we can now start deploying the load balancers. So Palni is saying, how can we install the licensed softwares in VM like Microsoft servers? So Palani, you when you start off by deploying a VM, you first decide which operating system you want to basically have the run server, right? For example, in this case, I chose Ubuntu, so you can choose a Microsoft Windows operating system or a Windows Server operating system. That's your choice. Now, based on the operating system that you choose, automatically the price of that server is adjusted. So let's say you're choosing a licensed product, that license cost is included in the rent of the server that you're going to pay. All right, so that's how it's managed. Uh, Gaurav is saying, what is priority? So Gaurav, priority is basically, so what you're referring to is this network, right? So in networking, you will see that there are some priority numbers over here, right? So let's say 310 priority number rule tells me that port 80 is allowed, right? So let's say I put in a rule which is at 309, which says port 80 is not allowed. So in that case, the lower the priority rule, the it takes precedence, in the sense that if there are two rules which are conflicting in nature, one is allowing it, one is not allowing it, the rule which has a lesser number of the priority number will get precedence over the other. So that is what the priority rules are for. If the IP addresses are now working, let's now start configuring the application gateway. So we are in the US server application gateway. So we left off over here. So we have chosen US server 2. Let's choose again virtual machine. And I think we will have to refresh this. So let's reload. Okay, so resource group was US servers. Application gateway name is AG-US servers. Region is West US. Tier is okay. Virtual network is US servers VNet. And okay, so in the previous one, I think it was creating an application gateway, but it got left off between. So I think let's start to configure that application gateway itself. Okay, so I think because we left off the previous application gateway, it has hindered a problem in AG subnet. Or what I think is the US server 1 that we deployed, I think we have deployed it in AG subnet. Let me just double check that. Okay, so this is server 1. And if you go to the overview, yes, so this is the problem. Okay, so let's see if we can change that. So we can go to networking. Okay, so let's do this, guys. Let's delete this again, because if we edit it, I think there will be a lot of steps that I have to do. It won't take much time. And in the meanwhile, Let's create one again. Okay, so the size of the loading, so we'll have to wait. Let's quickly enter the same info. I think let's be double sure that we're deploying it in the default subnet now. And management, let's turn off the diagnostics. View plus create. I think everything looks good now. Let's create it. Great, so it's now getting created. It'll take some 30-40 seconds. So let's complete that and then come back to our application gateway. So Manish is saying, is there a elastic load balancer or application load balancer concept in Azure also? Yes, Manish. So what we are making use of right now is application load balancer, right? And then there is also something called as just load balancer in Azure. So that is what is the network load balancer in Azure. All right. So my server 1 US has now been deployed. Let's try to copy this IP. Come back to terminal. I think server 1 we will have to reconnect. Okay, let's quickly update it. And now install the software. Okay, so the software is being installed. And now what I can do is go back to server 1, go to networking, add an inbound port rule. Port range would be 80, add it. Great. That rule is now being added, and at the same time, the software are also getting installed. Okay, so Palani is saying, what is the difference between application gateway and network load balancer? Well, Palani, I think I can explain it to you in this way that the application gateway works on the application layer in the OSI model, or if you have studied computer science. To make it more simple, you can think of it like this, that uh, you can define rules in your application gateway which will basically redirect based on the paths that you have. For example, if you type in the load balancer URL slash server 1, in that case it will redirect you to the server 1 uh, VM. If you type in slash server 2, it will redirect you to server 2 VM. In the network load balancer, it does not route based on the path-based rules. It basically can differentiate the network connection or the connection from the user based on the network that he's trying to connect from. For example, if he's trying to connect from the browser, you can basically redirect it to the some specific set of browsers. If he's uh, probably requesting it through a terminal, then you know it's a SSH connection. Then can be rerouted to something else. If it's being asked from an FTP client, it can redirect according to uh, that also. So basically, the network load balancer can redirect based on networks. Application load balancer can redirect based on the user paths. Okay, so that would be the difference. But I think if you don't know about Azure, it is okay if you do not understand it right now, because there are a lot of things to learn in Azure. Right? It's okay if we miss out on some today, because the main idea of today's session is to understand how companies like Google or uh, other big companies, they're making use of cloud for basic things that you do not notice every day, but today you're noticing. Okay, so let's copy the code, paste it here. I think that is about it. So now we can just verify if we can see this IP on the browser. So yes, we can. Great. And now what we can do is, okay, Suhas is saying, how much does it cost to owning a server versus buying from cloud? Okay, I think that was an earlier question. Okay, so now that we have the servers configured, let's go to application gateway, add one. We're gonna add it to the US server first. US servers resource group. Let's call it at AG-US. It's gonna be a part of West US. Auto scaling, we don't want it. Virtual network would be US servers VNet. Okay, what is the problem now? Well, this is part of, okay, let's do this. Uh, let's just delete the AG-net subnet and let's try to connect to it again. So US servers VNet, we go subnets, go to the AG subnet, let's delete it. Okay, so there seems to be some network interface which I was making use of it. What we can do is, let's leave this. Let's create one more subnet where we can have our application gateway. So let's call it as eg1-subnet, and this could be the range. Let's create it, and now, okay, this is a subnet that we want to configure. Let's choose an IP address. Let's add one, new -AG-US. Okay, let's add a backend pool. So backend pool is nothing but your servers, so, right? So let's add them. So let's choose a virtual machine. Let's choose the first virtual machine, and now let's choose the second virtual machine as well. Okay, so we have added the backend pool. Let's call it as US backend. Let's add it. Done. Configuration. So is there a routing rule that you want to specify? Let's not specify anything. So in that case, will be a okay. I think we have to specify. So let's specify a backend rule. Let's call it as first rule. Right. Listener name would be, let's say it's listener -US. Front-end IP would be public. Listener type is basic. Error page is URL. Backend targets. So it will be US backend HTTP setting. Let's add new HTTP setting. Let's call it as HTTP US. Add it. We're not adding any path-based rules in this load balancer. Okay. Let's click on add. And finally, let's just click on review plus create and create it. So with this, now we have created the load balancer that is required for these US servers. Now I think it will take a minute or two to deploy. So let's give it that time. Meanwhile, we can deploy the same for our Indian servers as well. So for our Indian servers, I think the first thing that we would need is the virtual network to be configured. Right. So let's go to our demo webinar resource group. Now in this, the virtual network, the subnets. In this, we just have the default one. So first we'll change the address space, saved. Now we'll go to subnets. Okay, let's add a subnet and let's call it the AG subnet. So now we have a subnet for the application gateway, right? And now let's go to application gateways. And this is the US one, which is getting created, right? Let's add one more, and it will be in the demo webinar resource group. We'll call it as EG-India. It will be part of the South India region. Not scaling. Virtual network would be demo webinar VNet. And yes, the subnet would be AG-subnet, which is great. Now let's add a public IP address to it, and let's call it AG-India. Again, the backends. So let's add a backend pool. It'll be of type virtual machine. So let's first add the first Indian server, and then the second Indian server. Okay, and let's call this as the India backend. So backend pool has been added. Now let's add a routing rule. So again, the same configuration, guys. The rule name, let's call it as India rule. Listener name, you can give it anything. Let's call it my listener. Front-end IP, it would be public, obviously. Then let's specify the backend target. So backend pool would be India backend. HTTP seconds, you will have to add a new setting. Let's call it as HTTP India. Here, nothing to be specified, just create the rule, the HTTP setting. And I think that should be about it. We're not adding any paths. And let's just click on create now. So with this, my application gateway has been created. And this application gateway is now being deployed for India. I think my US one should already be deployed. So let's check that out. So if I go to AG-US, this is the IP address. Let's copy it, paste it on my browser. And as of now, I'm not able to connect to anything right now, right? So what I'll do is I'll just go back to my US application gateway. Let me check. So there are a couple of things which can go wrong because of which it is not connecting. So let's first check the firewall. So here everything seems okay. Let's go to configuration. Here everything seems to be okay. Go to backend pools. Okay, so there are no targets according to the rules associated. Let's check that. Okay, so there are no targets in the backend pool for US. Let's add it. Although I think we did add it, but it's not there, so let's not waste any time and save this. Okay, while this is happening, we can also check out the other settings. So HTTP settings look good. Front-end IP configuration, public we have configured, it looks good. We have added a listener, which is okay. Rules look good. First rule, health probes, okay, nothing here. Then I think you also have something called as backend health. Okay, so application gateway right now is in the deployment phase, right? So that's why you cannot see it right now. So let's wait for it to get completed. I think our application gateway is still in the deployment phase. So as you can see that deployment to group US servers is still in progress. So I guess the application gateway has not deployed fully, and that's why it's taking some more time. So load balancers are a very heavy resource, guys. So it usually takes around some 5 to 6 minutes to deploy. So let's wait for that time uh, while this is completed, right? And while it is being completed, let me see if we have any more questions. So Apurva is saying in the subnet entry IP/16, what does 16 demonstrate? So Apurva, /16 is basically an IPv4 CIDR range, right? So the lower the number, the more bigger your range is. So the least, so if you give /16, I think you have around 65,000 hosts that you can add in the range, right? The more the number, the range decreases. So if you give /24, then it gives you around 255 hosts that you can add, right? So if you want more clarifications on these, because if I explain it to you right now, I think a lot of others will now be able to understand. So what I can do is, let me give you guys a website that you can refer to. Just type in Google IP CIDR and just go to CIDR to IPv4 address utility tool. So all you have to do is just specify the range over here. Let's say we give this range, right? So now it will give you it'll tell you how many IP addresses are included in this particular range. So you can see the first IP is this, the last IP is this, uh, and also it tells you the total number of hosts, which are 65,000. So if you reduce this to, let's say, 24, so now it will have only 255 or 256 hosts, actually, I'm sorry, right? And this is the first IP and this is the last IP which is present in the range. So basically the last number that you see after the slash, it denotes how many resources can be or how many IP addresses can be used in that range that you have specified. Okay, so that would be the answer. Okay, so Ilandi Ryan is saying, will the recording be shared? So yes, this will be shared later on your emails, sir. So I think that will be available to you. Amit is saying, what is total host? So total host is basically the total number of IP addresses that are available to use. Yes, Amit, that is exactly what you're asking. Okay, so let's come back. Let's see if everything has been deployed. Okay, so US servers, one is failed, one is succeeded. Let's see if we have everything in my application gateway. Okay, this is my US application gateway, guys, as you can see from the name. Let's check the backend health. So now you should have two servers listed over here, which are not listed. Okay, let's go to backend pools. So there are two targets, which is good. Let's go to HTTP settings. This looks okay. Rules looks okay. Okay, let's try to go here. Okay, and try to refresh this. Okay, so at least our application gateway has been deployed. It just says that there's a bad gateway. So we will see how we can fix this. Meanwhile, even our Indian server has been deployed. Sorry, Indian application gateway. Let's see how that is working out for us. So we'll go to the application gateway India. Let's copy the IP address, paste it in the browser, hit enter. Okay, this seems to be working just fine. So it says welcome to Indian server 1. Great. If you keep hitting refresh, it as you can see, it is now routing you to Indian server 2 as well, right? Again, it is routing to 1, again to 2, again to 1, again to 2. So it randomly basically takes up your request and it is now routing it to you, routing to one of the servers. So let me just give it to you guys, and then you guys can also try in your browser. Just keep hitting refresh and tell me the results that you get. Okay, so Palni is saying, is it possible to access a server directly even after the successful configuration of the application gateway? Yes, Palni, so you can do that. So usually on the production architectures, what happens is once there is a load balancer through which the servers can be accessed on the browser, the server's firewall is restricted to just allow connections from the load balancer. Obviously, this is done as a security reason, but you will have to do it by yourself, right? And that's a architectural best practice. Okay, so this is working fine, and our US application gateway is giving some issues to us. So let's see how we can figure that out. Let me just go to the US application gateway. So first things first, let's see if the US servers are working fine. Yes, the first server is working fine, and the second server is also working fine. Great. So I think the problem is that the backend health is still not restored over here. And because of this, I think it's giving us a 502 error. Okay, so to fix this, what we can do is we can go to backend pools and we can just delete these targets, save it, and once this deployment is successful, we can add the new two targets, again the two targets, and I think that should solve the problem. Okay, so while this is happening, let's go ahead and configure our traffic manager now. So we can see that the India load balancer is working perfectly fine. So now what we'll do is let's create a traffic manager. Okay, so let's create a new traffic manager. Let's click on add and let's call it as global traffic manager. And we can deploy it in any region. Let's say we are deploying it in US. Okay, resource group would be US servers. And okay, this is very important, the routing method. So we want to route it according to geography, right? So wherever the request is coming from, that request should basically be routed to the servers which are near to it. So we have chosen the routing method as geographic. Let's click on create. And with this, our traffic manager has now been created. Okay. Now this will take some time. So let's give that time to it. And now let's click on add. So in the traffic manager profile, okay, we have already added it. So it should list here. Let's refresh. So it will take some time to, okay, so deployment has succeeded. Great. So the traffic manager, we can see it over here now. The status is enabled. So we can go inside this traffic manager now. And what we can do is we can configure it to connect to our load balancers. Okay. So for doing that, you will have to go to configuration. Okay, everything looks good over here. So now we will have to add endpoints since there are no endpoints over here. So we'll go to endpoints, add an endpoint. So let's add it for the Indian server first, right? So whenever you're adding the endpoints, you have to make sure of one thing, which I'm going to show you in a little while. So first of all, let's select the public IP address, and the IP address would be for AG India. So as you can see, it says no DNS name is configured, right? So what you'll have to do is for the AG India IP address, AG India is nothing but the application gateway of India. You will have to configure the DNS. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Let's go to the IP addresses page. Go to public IP addresses. Here we'll go to AG-India, which is this. And AG-India, now what we'll do is we'll go to configuration. In configuration, we can give the DNS name, right? So all our DNS names will going to have this suffix attached with it. So let's give this as AG-IP. Now it is checking whether it's available. So it's AG-IP. So it's available, and now we can just click on save. With this, our public IP address is now going to have a DNS name. Okay, so it's done. And now over here, I will have to, I think, refresh this. So let's add an endpoint again. Let's call it as AG India endpoint. It's going to be a public IP address, and the IP address is AG India. Great. So let's click on add. And now I can just do a regional mapping over here, which is going to be mapped to it. So here we can choose to distribute traffic based on specific geographic locations. Okay. So anybody who's pinging from Asia, in Asia, let's say India, then they should basically be routed to this endpoint. Okay. So with this, your endpoint has now been configured in the traffic manager to connect to your Indian servers. So now let's verify if my AG US, yes, so in application gateway, for the US servers, it was successful, great. So now what I can do is I can again add the targets, and that should solve our problem. Okay, so the deployment is now happening. Meanwhile, let's verify if we go to our traffic manager, which is having this DNS. Are we able to access the servers or not? So yes, we are able to access the Indian servers, right? So that means our traffic manager is working just fine. So I can give you this IP address as well. So right now, because only Indian IP addresses are there, that's why our Indian servers are connected to it. Our Indian endpoint has been added. That's why only the Indian servers are connected. But as soon as we also add the application gateway for US, people who are from outside Asia, they will be able to connect to it, right? So while this is happening, now let's come down to the last part of a demo, which was to configure DNS name. So we will just search for DNS. Just select DNS zones. So here you can basically add a rule, or you can configure a custom URL which can connect to your traffic manager. And let's see how we can do that. So if you want to do that, guys, the simplest thing to do over here would be to first go to, so there's a website called Freenom. Just go over there. So Freenom is a website which basically gives you a free domain to work with. Okay. So let's sign in. I already have signed up over here. So you guys can also sign up. And with this, what you're going to get is you're going to get a domain that you can use for free. So for example, I have a azure-project.tk domain, which now I'm going to configure to connect to this traffic manager that I have specified. And then all I have to do is the moment I go to azure-project.tk, I would be able to see the website that I've deployed. Okay. So in order to do that, just go to DNS. So first you will have to add a DNS zone. Let's specify it in US again. And the name that we will give them is DNS-public. Okay, or basically it's expecting us to get the domain name itself. So it will be azure-project.tk. Okay, let's click on review plus create. Create it. And with this, our DNS zone will now be created. And this DNS zone, we will have to connect our domain to this DNS zone. And then we will configure a DNS zone to connect to our traffic manager. So that is how the flow is going to happen. So the DNS zone deployment is complete. So we can just go to the resource. So here we are. And here, this is the most important thing, guys. You get name servers. You get 4 name servers over here. And these name servers, you basically have to configure in your website, which is basically giving you the DNS name. Okay. So let's copy these. Let's go to a Freenom website, go to the domain that we are going to configure. It's going to be Azure-project. So we'll click on manage domain, and in manage domain, we'll go to management tools and then name servers. So just replace the name servers that are there with the new ones. And that should be it. That's about it, how to configure your domain to basically connect. So just copy it one by one. Okay, so now just click on change name servers. And that's it. That's all you have to do on the Freenom website. Okay, now come back to your DNS zones over here. And now what you can do is just close this. Okay, now you just have to point your DNS zone to your traffic manager. So just click on record, add a record set. And this, let's configure it to be CNAME. And it is the global traffic manager that we want to point on. Okay, let's click on OK. So here we have to enter something. So let's enter www and let's click on OK. Okay, so with this, our record set has now got created, and it will take like a minute or two, or sometimes it even takes 24 hours to basically make a change on the DNS server. So we'll check that. Meanwhile, let's come back to our application gateway, check the backend health now, and let's see if this has loaded. Great. So now it is showing us both the US backends, right, in the application gateway of US. And now if we go ahead and try to connect to it, this is the IP address. Great, we are able to connect to the US servers, and we can see that it first connects it to the first one, then the second one. So let's copy this and let me give it to you guys so you can test it out. Now what I'll do is on this application gateway, the IP address that we have just got, let's configure that to have a DNS name. So we'll go to configuration. This would be AGUS. So it's available. Let's save it. And then once this is configured, we can just go to the traffic manager now and add an endpoint for the US servers. So we'll go to endpoints, add an endpoint over here, and this will be for AG India. It's a public IP address, the target resource type, and we have to connect to new AG US. Click on add. Okay, so again, we will have to do the regional grouping. So in this case, now anybody can connect, right? So the whole world can connect, and if the whole world is connecting, sorry, this will not be AG India, this will be AG US. The whole world can connect, and if they want to connect, they will be able to go to this endpoint. So now let's see what happens So once let's wait for this to come online, and once it is, we will just check. If you go to the traffic manager, which server it is basically pointing us to, given the fact that this particular endpoint is for the whole world to access. Okay, let me see if we have any questions. So Komal is saying how to get a domain on Freenom. So Komal, just sign up on Freenom, and then okay, let me show it to you. So once you have signed up, go to the homepage, then go to services, go to register a new domain, and once you go to register a new domain, it will basically ask you which domain you want to go for. Just enter the name over here and find your new domain. You will get a list of available options. Choose the one that you want and then do the steps that I just told you. So that should help you out. Okay, Samir is saying, sir, how the process differs if you use Nginx to route. Do we need to configure the IP in the .conf file of Nginx? So yes, Samir, if you do using Nginx as a routing software, in that case, yes, you will have to use the conf file for mapping to the IP addresses or to the URLs that you want to map to, right? But when you're using Nginx, I think over there it's more of you will also have to define if it's a redirection. So in the case of redirection, the IP address or the URL will change, right? Or if it's load balancing. But to overcome that only, now AWS or Azure or Google Cloud has given us these services, because if you have to deploy Nginx as a load balancer, you will have to deploy it on a separate server, right? And you will have to do the configurations manually. Over here, since everything is available as a dashboard, you can actually go ahead and do it. So Manish is saying DNS update is done and is mapping to URL. Okay, great, Manish. We'll just check that out. Cool. So now that our traffic manager, let's just verify. Okay. So traffic manager is online, and if I go to the traffic manager URL first, let's see where we are being routed to. Okay, so I'm being routed to the Indian servers. Always great. Now what I can do is I can connect to a US server, right? And then through VPN, and then we can see if it is working out for us. So, or is anybody here from the US who has joined us who can help us out, whether they're able to connect or not? Is anybody from US joined in who can try it out? Okay, so Anji is from US. Great, Anji. Can you go to this uh, traffic manager URL and tell us what is the result that you are getting? Tirupati, Aparna, Venkatesh. All right, great. Great. So you are all from US. You just can check and tell me this global traffic manager where it is basically routing to. Okay, so for Venkatesh, it's Indian server 1. For Anji, it's US server 2. Okay, others guys, can you please confirm? Tirupati, it's US server 1. Viren from Canada, it's routing to US server 1. Aparna, it's routing to US server 2. Babu, it's routing to Indian server. Ramkrishna, it's routing to US server. Akshat from UK, it's routing to US server. Vivek, it's routing to Indian server. Anjin to US server. Gaurav is from India. Okay. So I guess, guys, most of you. So sometimes there are inconsistencies. Sometimes people in other regions might get redirected to the region to another service, but I think that is just because the service has just been started. If you leave it for 24 hours to work or 30 hours to work, it will start functioning properly. And then everyone, I think 95% of us got the right answer, right? People from India are able to access the Indian servers, and people from US are able to access the US servers. Great, guys. So, and now let's check the final part of our project. So now just let's go to azure-project.tk and let's see if that is working out for us. Great. So now even the azure-project.tk URL is pointing to our servers. Try it out and let me know what the results are. So now the people from US also should be seeing the US page, and Indian one should be seeing from the Indian page. Great, guys. So with this, guys, I think we have successfully completed our hands-on, and that is exactly what we intended to do. So people who are trying it from other regions are getting to US regions, US servers, and people who are trying it from India, when they are going to this URL, azure-project.tk, they are being routed to the Indian server. So with this, guys, we have concluded today's session.